Before we get to the installation of your rear bumper here on your Jeep, let's talk about some of the key features. One is 1-inch D-rings. These D-rings go all the way through the bumper. They're welded front and back. You got extremely heavy-duty mounting. This is probably the strongest bumper you can get for your Jeep. 2x4 construction, 3/16 thick, tapered ends, comes to the edge of the body to protect it. Offer the frame kit here for heavy-duty installation. That keeps any twist out of that rear cross member. Has an integrated 2-inch receiver built into the bumper. Has your safety cable or safety chain mounts right here. Has an 1.25 inch steel shaft that goes all the way through the bumper. So we've machined this bumper, pressed that shaft in, welded it on the bottom. There's tapered roller bearings here. It has a grease zerk here to grease it. Has a aluminum cap that covers it to keep moisture out. It has a lockdown pin, so this pin locks it in place when the swing is open. This bumper tire carrier system comes with a tailgate bar so that we're squished into rubber down below by the latch and up above to help eliminate any type of movement. We have an easy access opening handle. Comes with an adjustable length high lift jack mount. Normal setup for 48-inch jack. Has a lock provision here for your high lift jack. It has a setup here for your antenna if you're running a CB. This also is integrated with our adjustable up and down and in and out tire carrier. So if you got an offset wheel, or you got a 38-inch tire, or a 31-inch tire, or a 29-inch tire, you got the adjustments to make it work on any setup. We're going to go ahead and disassemble the factory bumper off of this TJ so we can install the rock hard 4x4 bumper. Something I want to point out is if you notice how low this factory trailer hitch is, it's 16 inches to the bottom of the receiver. Now, when we install our rock hard 4x4 bumper, we're going to bring the trailer hitch up here. The reason that is because you're always hitting it when you're coming off of rocks or obstacles when you're out wheeling. One of the added benefits to our rock hard 4x4 bumper is the trailer hitch is going to be taller. To remove the rear bumper end caps, you're going to use a TORX 27. You're going to remove 2 screws here on the top, one here, another one here, and another one on the front side. So there's 5 screws that hold the end caps on each side. Once you remove those screws, go ahead and pull the end caps out of place. One thing nice about our TJ rear bumper is it's a closed box system so that you don't have debris and stuff collecting inside your frame rails. Now that we've removed the lower bumperettes on the bumper, we're going to go ahead and remove the spare out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the spare tire. Now, if you're installing our bumper only without the tire carrier, you're going to use your factory hanger. Now, the reason we replace the factory hanger and hang it off the bumper is so that you don't break the bolts out of your tailgate over time carrying a large diameter spare tire. Now that we've removed the factory tire, we're going to remove the factory tire carrier. We're going to take the lens out and unhook the wiring so that we don't have to cut our wires, because we'll be reusing it when we install the third taillight. And then also we're going to use a 1/2 inch or a 13mm socket and go ahead and remove the tire carrier off the rear tailgate. Go ahead and grab your T20 and remove the lens cover on this light. That will allow you to access the wires so that you can disconnect them. Go ahead and remove the electrical from the third brake light mount and take a 1/2 inch or 13mm socket and remove the 4 bolts that hold the third brake light to the tire carrier. Now that we've removed the third brake light, we're going to go ahead and use our 13mm or 1/2 inch socket and remove the 5 bolts that hold this factory tire carrier to the rear tailgate. Now that we've removed the bolts, we'll go ahead and remove the factory tire hanger off the rear bumper. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the factory rear bumper. This is going to be done by using an 18mm ratchet or an end wrench or a ratcheting wrench on each side. There'll be 2 bolts on each side. Now, if you are working on a CJ7 or a YJ, sometimes there's what they call bumperettes, and they were a piece of metal bent in a U shape here, and they mounted with these 2 bolts on the outside and the 2 on the inside. And go ahead and remove those now also. Now, we're going to go ahead and remove the rear bumper. Now, as you can see in the previous photos, this had a factory trailer hitch on it. We went ahead and removed that as it was kind of hard to film as the bolts were pretty rusty. They'd been on there for quite a while in the mud and muck. So what we've went to do is we've went ahead and removed that. Now we're going to head and remove the rear bumper. We've removed the bumperettes, plastic end pieces, and removed the nuts from each side. We'll go ahead and remove this out of the way now. I want to talk to you a little bit about some differences that we've seen out there in the Jeeps. Now, on a CJ7, CJ5, and a YJ, And your earlier model TJs, you're not only going to have the two mounting holes out at the outer side, but you're also going to have two more here. Okay? Now, if your Jeep is not equipped with the inner two holes, we want you to put those in there. And so you may have to drill the two holes. What you'll do is you're going to take the lower section of the bumper, mount it up as we're going to show, and then mark the other center holes. I want to talk to you a little bit about our CJ7, YJ, and a TJ frame brace. Now what's happening is this rear cross member is not really strong in the Jeep, but what we've done is we're going to brace it going forward. So this brace goes in here like this. It mounts to where the rear bumper mounts, and it also mounts alongside the frame. Now on a TJ and a LJ, your 97 and on up to 06, these two bolt holes are here. We've made a provision to add a third one. Not necessarily needed, but if the drill in the hole is not a big deal, go ahead and add that bolt hole, and we'll show you that in the installation on this TJ. Now this particular one here is for a CJ7, okay? And this mounts where your bumper does, and then these are factory holes going down the side of the frame. Now on a YJ, it's very similar to this also. The only difference is it has an area here for a weld. The reason is that is your shackle for your suspension is right in the way. So it doesn't allow us to have the bolt heads here for the frame brace. So it does require a small weld on a YJ. The rear cross member takes a lot of strength. And what this does is when you brace it forward, it really eliminates any twist on that. And if you got a CJ, you could be dealing with a 30-year-old vehicle. Okay? So it's important to put this frame brace kit in there. Now the reason why we don't include the frame brace kit with the bumper is we use the same bumper on all those Jeeps. All the CJs, the YJs, the TJs, and the LJs all use the same bumper, but the frame brace is different. Always recommend to put it in. It'll take the twist out of your rear cross member and make sure your bumper is going to be here forever. We're installing this today on a TJ. The hardware that's included are these bolts that have a kind of what we call a spade washer built onto them. And what it does is these are going to go up inside the frame, and they're going to go in there, and when they're put in place, they don't turn. The reason is it's kind of hard to put a wrench in there to tighten them, and the nuts are going to go on the outside here with a washer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go underneath the vehicle. We're going to show you how to put these bolts up through the frame, install your frame brace for your TJ. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm using a 5/8 end wrench, and I'm going to put the bolt right in there. There's a hole on the bottom side of the frame. I'm going to bring that up through. I'm going to put that through there. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the brace while I'm holding it in place. Okay. Put a washer in a nut. Okay, I'm going to do the same for the bottom one. And we have a provision here for the third hole. If you want to go ahead and drill that, you can install that there. This makes it so we can bolt this to the rear of the bumper. First of all, what I want to do is we're going to show you how to mark the rear holes to where you're going to have to drill the rear cross member on a TJ where it's not, where they're not drilled through. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold the bumper in place. We're going to stick two bolts coming from the forward side going backwards so we can set the rear bumper on. And then we're going to install the two plates, one on each side, and a nut, just to hold it in place so that we can mark our inner bolt holes. We've taken the outer plate here, which is one of the four plates, went ahead and took some of the gold bolts, put them through the cross member coming back, and went ahead and bolted the bumper up. Now you'll notice that there is three openings and we're only bolting to two. This is designed so that you can mount the bumper up 1 inch or level with the rear cross member. Because this particular Jeep didn't have the inner set of holes, we've taken a magic marker and went ahead and marked the openings in here. And then I've set this plate right here and marked it up here so that I know where my holes are going to line up, so that we can go ahead now and lower this bumper down in place and go ahead and drill our holes in the rear cross member. Now that we went ahead and marked the holes, we're using a 1/2 inch drill bit. We're going to go ahead and drill the rear cross member on each side of where we're going to put our inner set of bolt holes. Now we're going to go ahead and put the bolts going backwards through the frame kit, the rear cross member, through the bumper. We're going to take one of the four plates. These are the four that are the same. We're going to sit this in here, as a big washer. Next, we're going to use a flat washer and a lock washer and a nut on each bolt. Now that we've went ahead and installed the nuts here on the outer two sets of bolts and this plate, okay, we're going to go ahead and do the inner ones. Now, the inner ones, we drilled the cross member, okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to center the bumper side to side. Okay, as you can see, there's an adjustment here. The other thing there's an adjustment up and down. If you notice here, we've brought this bumper up to get a better departure angle. For people that don't want that, they can put it on the lower set of slots here. This bumper is adjustable up and down 1 inch. Makes it so you can install it with or without a body mount setup on your Jeep. If you have a body lift where you've spaced it up, go ahead and put it up. Either way, the biggest thing we want to do is make sure you have a great departure angle coming off of the boulders and obstacles that you're going to be on. Now that we've installed the bolts through the frame brace kit, through the rear cross member, and into the rear bumper with our plate and nut washers and lock washers attached, we're going to go ahead and do the inner set of bolts on each side. We've already drilled the rear cross member with the 7/16 bit. Now we're going to go ahead and take the bolts that go across the back of the fuel tank skid down so that we can lower that down in place to get our hands up in there to get our bolts and plates in place. Now we're going to be removing the 13 millimeter nuts that hold the fuel tank skid in place. This will allow us to lower it down slightly so that we can get our hands in there to get our plates installed. Now that we've lowered the gas tank down, that will allow us access to this rear cross member to get to our inner set of bolts where we're going to put the 2 plates, the 2 that are odd out of the 6, and the bolts. And the bolts are going to go through the rear cross member going forward. We're going to use the bolts that have the little spades on them also in your hardware kit. That'll keep them from turning on the inside of the frame. Okay, now that we've went ahead and installed all 8 bolts going across the rear of the cross member into the bumper with the plates, with the washers and the lock washers and the nuts, we're going to go ahead and use an 11/16 end wrench and tighten these down. Next, you're going to go ahead and locate the striker nut and the striker. The nut is going to slip through the back of the bumper where we've slotted it and screw the striker through the top of the bumper. Now, using a TORX 50, go ahead and tighten the striker down. Now, once you've got it in place and the nut is held tight, go ahead and just loosen it just a little bit so that it is about like that. And once we put the latch on, we'll center this in the latch and then we'll go ahead and snug it on down for a final tighten. To install the upper part of the carrier, we need to remove the tail light to do so. So this is on the passenger side. You're going to use a Phillips screwdriver. You're going to remove the 4 screws that hold the lens in place. Then you're going to use a 3/8 socket to remove the actual taillight assembly from the back of the body. Now this will allow us access to drop the hub assembly on. I want you to go through your hardware pack and locate the washers and these 2 thick spacers. Now what these are designed for is these washers set the heights of the swing. Okay? So what you're going to do is, depending on the size of tire and if you're running can mounts or baskets, if you're running a stock size tire, most of the time you're going to start off with 3 shims, 2 to 3 shims. If you're running the stock size tire and baskets and can mounts, you're normally going to start off with about 4 shims, sometimes 5. If you're running up to a 38-inch tire with the can mounts and the racks, you're going to be around 5, 6 shims. And what this does is you're going to set these shims on the post here, okay? And then you're going to take 1 thick spacer and set this on the post. And that thick spacer is actually going to go up in the grease seal of the hub. What you're doing with these here is we're setting the height of the swing. And so what we do is we want it so that the swing, when it's fully mounted, so that it catches into the latch in the right area, and it also makes it so you don't have to really lift your tire carrier up when you're closing it. Now we're going to go ahead and set this assembly on the rear bumper. Now we're going to go ahead and push the large spacer down in the hub assembly. Now, if you'll be able to take a look right here, you'll see how that large spacer just sits right outside of the grease seal. Make sure that the bottom spacer went all the way up in the hub assembly also. It should look just like the top. Now we're going to go ahead and take our extra shims and put them on the top just in case we ever need them for adjustment. And we're going to go ahead and install the aluminum nut on the top of the post. Now you're going to want to go ahead and tighten this down fairly snug. You want to make sure that those bearings are compressed. What I normally do is take a big crescent wrench to do that. Now I want you to get your hardware kits and find a couple parts. One is the rock hard 4x4 handle, two of the smaller nuts that are in the hardware pack, along with the button head Allen screws. There'll be two each of those. There's going to be 3 5/16 bolts, a nut plate, the latch, and 3 washers. Next, I want you to take the latch and the handle. Latch and handle go this way. So the latch is facing this direction. I want you to put the handle on the latch like this. I want you to put the button head bolts through the back, this side, with the nut towards the center of the latch. Go ahead and tighten these screws using a 4mm Allen wrench and a 7/16. I want you to locate the nut plate. You'll see how there's 3 holes in the nut plate. Now they're not lined up, but they do match the holes in the latch. What you're going to do is you're going to take this nut plate, you're going to slide it in until they line up with the bolt holes down below. Take the latch, slide the handle of the latch through the opening slot in the bumper, and bolt that up through the bottom of the swing arm into that nut plate. Now use a 1/2 inch in wrench or 1/2 inch socket and tighten these bolts down. Now, I want you to just snug them up. They don't have to be over tightened, as you don't want to squish the latch. Now that the striker is just loose and you've installed the latch, I want you to go ahead and shut the rear tire carrier and then go ahead and open it real lightly so that you don't move the striker, and use your TORX T50 and go ahead and tighten your striker down in place. This centers the striker in the latch. Next, I want you to go through your hardware, locate the rubber bumper, the Allen head bolt, and a nut. What you're going to do is you're going to put the bolt through the rubber, install it in here, put the nut on the back side. You're going to use a 3/16 Allen and a 1/2 inch in wrench, and go ahead and tighten those down in place. Okay, this latch is just like a door latch of a car. You have a single click and you have a double click, just the same as on a car door. So what I want you to make sure is, when you close it and you squished into this rubber, I want to make sure it's going to the second stage of that latch. And then go ahead and feel around on the back side here, and you can see that that latch is going to the second stage. You can see how this latch right here is parallel with the swing arm. That means that it's closed to the second stage. Go ahead and locate the swing arm end cap. Go ahead and place it over the handle like this. Take a rubber mallet or a hammer and a piece of wood and go ahead and tap this in place. I want to talk a little bit about this hard plastic block here in the height of the swing arm. Now, you can see how this hard plastic block has been machined to put a radius on it so this arm will slide up on it. What I want is, with the tire carrier on it and your racks, or however you're going to set your particular bumper up with accessories, when you close the swing arm, I want it to just touch it here and jump up on it. Now, on this particular build, we are going to be installing the racks, the can mounts, and the spare tire. So we're going to set it without a tire and carrier on it, just so it's right above it, so that the weight of the can mounts and the carrier and everything will make it so it contacts the block about right here, so that when you close it, if you just close it just like with a little bit of uplift but not much, you'll be able to go right on top of this block. Then it'll be nice and secure and solid. Now that we've went ahead and set the height of the swing arm, and we know that we're not going to be removing this again, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the taillight and the lens cover. One thing I want to make sure that we do is we go ahead and install the grease arc. Now this grease arc screws into the hub assembly right here. Now, one thing to remember is, what we're trying to do with this grease arc is we're trying to fill this hub completely full of grease. What we want to do is we want to keep the moisture out of this. You'll notice that the rock hard 4x4 cap comes over the top of the hub assembly to just as a shield to keep moisture out. You want to make sure that when you fill it full of grease, that you actually get grease out of the bottom grease seal. What I normally do is I fill it up until I get grease out of the bottom seal. Then I go ahead and remove the grease arc. That removes any air pressure in there, and go ahead and put it back in, put a couple more pumps off the grease gun. This way you've really filled that whole hub assembly with grease. You'll keep the moisture out. Those bearings will last forever. You know, every once in a while it's good to put a couple squirts of grease into there with a grease gun. It's not something you have to do all the time. You'll notice sometime that you will get a little grease out of the bottom. On a really hot day, when you pressure wash your Jeep, it'll go right away. This is our new design rear tire carrier. Now I want you to go ahead and find this piece here. This is the height adjustment for the tire carrier. What you're going to do is put it in place here, put the bolts with a washer on it, a lock washer, and the nut on each side, this side. Now, what I want to talk to you about on it is there's adjustments as far as heights. Okay? And so what you have is you have different holes here for different heights. If you're running a 37, 38-inch tire, you're going to put it pretty much all the way to the top. If you're running a 35, you'll be at the next hole down, a 33 or 31 down from there. And you could lower it all the way here if you want it closer to the ground. Now, something to keep in mind, if you do lower it all the way down, you have to watch, make sure you do still clear for your trailer hitch, and to make sure you're not getting in the way of your departure angle. That's why we made it adjustable, so you can put it the way you want it. Now we're going to use a 5/8 and an 11/16 and go ahead and tighten these down in place. Now we're going to grab the tire adapter. This adapter goes on here and matches up with the curvature of the other plate. So what you're going to do now is decide how far you want this in and out. And this might take a trial and error, but we're going to go ahead and set this about right here for the tire and wheel that we're putting on this Jeep. Now I want to show you something, make it a little easier for you. A lot of people ask, how do I know what stud area to put it in? What you're going to do is you're going to set it down into your wheel, line the holes up that line up, and go ahead and drop the studs down in place. This way you'll know where to pull the studs through the tire adapter. Now, the Rockhard 4x4 tire adapter has all different patterns in it. You can, whether you have aftermarket axles in your TJ or you have a JK bolt pattern or whatever you may have, the Rockhard 4x4 tire carrier adapter works. Now that we've located where the studs go, we're going to go ahead and mount our tire adapter to the tire carrier height adjustment. We're going to go ahead and drop the bolts down through. We'll install the nuts with lock washers on the back side. Go ahead and tighten those down using your 5/8 and 11/16 wrenches. Now we're going to go ahead and pull the studs through the tire carrier adapter. We're going to use the studs that come in the hardware kit, and then I always use like an extra big washer or a big bolt that goes over. And then like just a standard nut that you may have for your tire. One thing you need to pay attention to is when you pull them through, the reason we use a big nut or a washer on the back side is there's these knurls that go through this plate. And these knurls that go through this plate, and they're going to come through the plate and stick through, but we want the stud to seat all the way against the back of the tire adapter, so that's why we put the washer on there. You're going to push these through. We're going to go ahead and tighten these down. Now, we don't recommend using an impact on this. Go ahead and use like a tire iron or a ratchet and go ahead and tighten them down to pull the studs through. As you can see, as we tighten this down, it's pulling the stud right into the back of that plate. Repeat this for the other studs. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the rubbers across the area where we're going to mount the tailgate guard. That is going to use a TORX T27 to remove these rubbers. These also here are not needed. We're going to go ahead and remove them to help clean up the look of the tailgate. Next, go ahead and find the 5 bolts left in your hardware kit. 3 are going to be larger, 2 are going to be smaller, and 2 washers. The washers go on these smaller bolts, and you're going to install the smaller bolts in the outer bolts and the larger ones in the center. What you're going to do is you're going to find your tailgate bar. There's a long end and a short end. The long end's going to go towards the latch, and go ahead and bolt that in place. On the outer bolts, we're using a 7/16 to tighten these down. On the inner ones, we'll use a 1/2 inch. Now that we've installed this bar, I want to talk a little bit about it. This is the tailgate bar, and what this does is we're going to put a rubber in between the A-frame and this tailgate bar, and this braces it. And what we've done it just to spread in the load out. This will help for rattling and to keep vibration out of the tire carrier. Now, one thing we've done is we've supplied a self-tapping screw to mount it to this tailgate bar, or you can mount it to the A-frame of the tire carrier. Another thing is about this tailgate bar, when mounting it to a CJ7, these bolts will need to be drilled when installing it. Now that we've went ahead and installed our rubber, we're going to go ahead and close the tire carrier. We want to check and make sure that it's squishing into rubber. Now, the reason this could vary is not because our bumper varies, it's because the Jeep body varies as where it is mounted onto the frame. So what I mean by that is the body can be mounted forward and backwards up to about 3/4 of an inch.